Thank you, Michael and Ann. Well, the slideshow was more than you ever wanted to know about me or anyone. But there was a contextual problem. Mary said I graduated 14th in my class in high school. What she didn't say was that was 14 out of 15. It was really 434. Let me first introduce my beautiful wife and talented wife, Amy. Amy. She just retired at the end of last year as CEO of the National Osteoporosis Foundation, or NOF. We do love our initials here in Washington. If you don't know the acronyms here, you can hardly have a substantive discussion about anything. Amy insisted we get all of our children and grandchildren in the slideshow, and since we have 5 children and 13 grandchildren, from here to Chicago to California, we needed lots of pictures. I want to thank all of our children for joining us here this evening. We don't see them nearly enough, and we miss them greatly. First, my son, John, from California. My son, I have a lot of them to introduce. My son, David, and his wife, Katie, from Evanston, just north of Chicago. My daughter, Ann O'Brien, and her husband, Michael, from Wilmette, just north of Evanston. My daughter, Robin, and her husband, Bob, from Rockville, Maryland. And one of our grandchildren is here tonight, Jack Porter. Jack, stand there. Jack is a freshman at Dickinson College in Pennsylvania and a football player. Our son, McKay, and his wife, Jen, from Alexandria, Virginia. I have been so fortunate throughout my life, not only with a wonderful family of whom I'm so proud, but I have been blessed with intelligent, thoughtful, caring, and hardworking people who have made those things Mary talked about happen when I was in Congress. Representing my staff back home in Illinois, my Chief of Staff, Janine Hotelling, and one of my outstanding staffers, Linda Reed. Also, I want to recognize Pat Kammerer, who was not on my staff, but worked in every one of my campaigns, and she's here tonight, and I'm so eternally grateful to her as well. Representing my congressional staff here in Washington, my Chief of Staff, Rob Bradner, joined by Bill Schmidt, Jill Cowperthwaite, and Jeanette Winden, all who've made it a joy to serve my 700,000 constituents. I don't think Bill will mind my telling a little story about him. He worked on my campaign staff when he had just graduated from Amherst, and the only position I had available was as my driver. So on his first day on the job, he picked me up where I lived in Wilmette, and we were joined by a reporter from one of our local papers who was going to report on my campaign. So Bill got behind the wheel and drove about 1.5 miles when he was pulled over by a policeman for speeding. He's never been able to live that down. Representing my professional staff of my subcommittee of appropriations, my clerk, who was later Secretary of Health and Mental Hygiene in Maryland, Tony McCann, joined by one of his able staffers, Nicole Kunkel. There is a table of legislative people here from my alma mater, Northwestern University, with whom I have been privileged to work since my retirement from Congress many years ago. They should stand. And a table of colleagues from Hogan Lovells, the worldwide law firm where I'm still a senior advisor. Thank you all for being here. Also want to express my admiration for Harold Varmus, the director of NIH when I was subcommittee chairman, and a joy to work with, as was Elias Zerhouni and Francis Collins, with whom I was privileged to work after retiring from Congress. In fact, I think it is a little strange to be receiving a Research America Award named for me, so I'd like to dedicate this award to Francis and to Tony Fauci and all the Institute directors, to the center and office directors, and the research scientists, and the administrators and staff, in fact, to the entire NIH family, including those who clean the labs and scrub the floors. All of them. All of them are essential to the NIH's mission. And of course, I have been so fortunate to have had Paul Rogers as my mentor, my predecessor, and an inspiration at Research America, as well as my colleague and partner at Hogan. Most importantly, I have been so fortunate to work with Mary and her fabulous staff and our entire outstanding board members who together make such a tremendous difference for medical research and the improvement of human health. They really do a wonderful job. Now let's talk about Ann Lurie, whose generous support has made this award possible, not just for this year, but for the next 4 years. Ann is one of the greatest philanthropists of medical research in America. She not only gives the resources, but she is hands-on in seeing the research facilities through to completion and staffed up and running and making contributions to improve health. Here's a glimpse into her character. You should know she funded a clinic and hospital in rural Kenya to serve the Maasai people, who could be seen waiting their turn to be seen in their native costumes, holding their spears with their earlobes stretched in their cultural style. The clinic served about 100,000 Maasai people and was called Mberekani. Amy and I got to visit the hospital as one of Ann's guests in 1 year and couldn't have been more impressed. Ann provided the Maasai people with physicians, prescription drugs, surgeries, all of their health needs. She paid the entire expense of this care and personally visited and stayed at the clinic about every 2 weeks or so for what was it, Ann, maybe 8 or 10 years? 12 years. She would still be providing for the Maasai if not for the culture of corruption in certain parts of Kenya. Thank you, Ann, for all you do for the cause of good health. We are greatly in your debt for your leadership and commitment. Let me close with a small sermonette. Every Christmas, about a month before, I watch 4 DVDs as I use my treadmill. The first one is Miracle on 34th Street, the old one, with Edmund Gwenn, Maureen O'Hara, John Payne, and Natalie Wood. Then I watch It's a Wonderful Life, and all of you know the actors in that one. Then I watch Scrooged with Bill Murray, who was once a constituent of mine. And finally, I watch A Christmas Carol with George C. Scott, Charles Dickens' tale of Ebenezer Scrooge, which was published in 1843. If you haven't watched this DVD, you really should. Anyway, when you get to the second ghost, the ghost of Christmas Present, Scrooge asks the ghost what he is shielding beneath his voluminous robes. The ghost opens his robes to reveal 2 scary figures from whom Scrooge recoils. The ghost says they represent ignorance and want, and if not overcome, spell doom for the human race. Here, 175 years later, we still find them with us. But the problem now isn't that we don't have highly educated people and very wealthy people, but we are too strung out between the richest and the poorest and the most educated and the least. What worries me most today is that we have learned how to make progress with evidence-based decision-making, with science, for example, and yet many of our fellow citizens ignorantly reject this and also want to undo much of the safety net that helps alleviate poverty. What to do to address these and many other serious problems that face our country? Participate, vote, get out there and make a difference as a citizen. But that's not nearly enough. Get your relatives, friends, colleagues, and neighbors to do so as well. We are all privileged citizens in this great experiment in democracy and self-government, and we cannot allow it to fail and turn backwards. We can only serve it by being part of it and by participating. Please remember this next November. Thanks for listening to me, and thank you for this award.